doing tonight? Thanks for coming. Are you guys excited to be here? You guys are literally VIPs. You guys are here on your own accord. You guys have been fighting the vaccinations, and I know those are mandated on you, and we're here to talk about that tonight. We've got a very exciting show here for you this evening. This is about you, not about me. And this is one of the things that I've sort of left off the table during the debates is the mandatory vaccines, because frankly, it's not going to make me that popular, is it? I mean, let's just face it. The overwhelming support for vaccinations, for masking, all that type of thing is something that's already going to come out. So I'm really eager to hear from each and every one of you. I am happy to stay here for as long as you guys want to go ahead and stay here tonight, because your story needs to be told. It's not being told in the media. Front page of the Albuquerque Journal, you know exactly what it said. Vaccinations now available for ages 5 to 11. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what does. Okay. We know something about under the age of 18. What do we know about people under the age of 18? Exactly. Not impacted by COVID-19. I'm going to throw out some quick facts to kind of jog your memory and get you guys started. You know that if you're getting vaccinated right now, what exactly is happening? What are you getting vaccinated for? You're getting vaccinated for COVID-19 from 2020, not 2021. Okay, we know a lot about this stuff. This is really interesting information. We'll have Dr. William Summers. We have D. Dowd Muska, AKA the Dowd 3000, who's going to be here, not affiliated with my campaign. We also have Dr. X. He's welcome to go ahead and introduce himself. But this is an opportunity for you guys to actually talk about the information. We are in a crisis here in the state of New Mexico, and specifically in the city of Albuquerque, the most densely populated city in the entire state. I can tell you, if we push back here, we're going to be pushing back everywhere throughout the rest of the state. The state of New Mexico is literally depending upon us right now. Okay? Your courage to stand up, to come out, to show your faces, to get your voices heard is exactly what's going to lead us back. Okay? And I'm glad that you guys are standing behind me. I'm standing behind you. I'm unvaccinated. Yeah. Anybody else? You guys, for far too long, have been ridiculed, threatened. They've done everything they can. Oh, you don't care about people's health? You don't care about people's well-being? Why are you so, you guys know the next word. What's the next word? Selfish. Right? It's literally just coming out. You're so selfish right now because you're deciding not to become vaccinated. You're not selfish. You're taking care of your own health. Whatever happened to it being a personal responsibility? That's a very, very critical piece in all of this, right? Go back to Obama's Obamacare, right? Right? Choose your doctor, choose your healthcare. You can do that right here. So without further ado, we've got cameras. If you don't want to be on camera tonight, I'm just going to ask you guys to go ahead and step away from being in front of the camera. This is weird, by the way. I've got literally a voice in my ear, more than the voices that I normally have during my show. So very interesting. I'm listening to a whole conversation over there on the table at the same time that I'm talking to you guys. So it's very, very, very cool. John, are you out there? I've got blinding lights in my face. All right, there's John. We want to thank, first of all, if you guys have seen our commercials for our mayoral race, they've all been produced 100% locally by John Padilla and Rick Metz and you public, 100% locally homegrown. Thank you very much. Before we get started, my 5 C's are. Oh, I love corruption. What else? Crime, corruption, what else? COVID, commerce, and city. There we go. Run it like someone who? That's right. Commerce, right? Grow every category. When it comes to crime, what do we want to do? Reduce every category, okay? Very important. COVID, no mandates, no shutdowns. Very important. No more mandates, okay? Critical. All right. So I can't see anything. I love this. This is awesome. I'm literally flying blind, just like I'm doing my radio show. So without further ado, this man has 29 years in public policy experience, celebrating, I believe, about a month ago. He's one of the most intelligent, knowledgeable, one of the most widely read guys that I know. He cares deeply about what he's doing. He's more committed to my radio station than I am to my own radio station, if you can believe that. The guy is an absolute QC. What's QC? Quality control on my radio station. He's the engine that keeps the Rock of Talk running. He is D. Dowd Muska, AKA the Dowd 3000. Yep, Dowd can go and have a seat.
It is blinding up here.
Yeah, it is. It's very blinding. The vaccine mandate town hall.
I'm sure everyone has a mask on out there, so I just can't tell. With a heavy heart, the Kiwanis Club of Corrales Foundation has made the extremely difficult decision to call off the 2021 Corrales Harvest Festival.
Oh.
Why? This is an exact quote. Because we cannot control the environment of most of the major locations of the festival in a way that offers protection for the safety of the children attending, as well as the kind, generous people who volunteer to put on the festival. For that reason, we believe that staging the festival this year may well put them at risk of coronavirus infections. Not coronavirus fatalities, not coronavirus hospitalizations, coronavirus infections. I thought that line about children was very interesting. I wonder how many people who run the Kiwanis Club out there know that on an annualized basis, more children die from car accidents, over 4,000 a year, homicides, this is shocking, cancer, children, suicides by hanging, suicides by firearms, drowning, drug overdoses, congenital anomalies, conditions they're born with, and even heart disease, than the number of children in America who've died on an annualized basis from coronavirus. If you drive your kids places and or let them swim in swimming pools or lakes, you're putting them more at danger than from the coronavirus. This is my only question of the night. How many New Mexicans aged 17 and under have died from COVID-19? Five. One of them was a 12-year-old born with just horrendous congenital problems, seizures, and just terrible, terrible problems. We sure haven't bought a lot for our lockdowns in New Mexico, have we? Let me look at the numbers. The numbers on our economy, we are now number 4th worst for unemployment. It actually peaked at 12.5% in July. We are now, only Nevada, California, and New York have worse unemployment rates. I think they were a little lockdown crazy as well. Have the lockdowns have they saved lives? We're 20th in terms of number of deaths per 100,000 population. We are basically tied with Texas and Oklahoma, Oklahoma having some of the lightest lockdown touches. We are significantly worse than Utah, which had among the rock bottom lockdown policies. So have we purchased a lot of health for our extreme lockdowns in Albuquerque? The mayor, as Eddie said, I'm not a member of the campaign, but the mayor in the last couple of debates has talked about how we're emerging better than ever. We're beating all of the other metro areas in our region in the coronavirus era. I took a look at the 10 metro areas that have a higher population than Albuquerque, the 10 that have a lower population than Albuquerque. Of those 21 metro areas, we are 16th for our jobless rate. We are 18th for our overall job growth or loss. 16th and 18th out of 21. And the mayor says we're leading the way out.
He literally led with that, right, Dowd?
Yeah, he did.
And one thing that should be stated about Oklahoma has been open for more than a year. Let me put a stat in front of you. We're one of 3 states that's never lifted the emergency mandate since March 13th, 2020. We're one of 7 states that has not lifted the indoor mask mandates.
That's enough of the Dowd 3000. I'm here to learn from you folks, and I will stop reading the numbers, and that's it for me.
All right, so Dowd, let's give him a great big hand. He knows all the information. I think it's very important that each of us up here understand that we now have data I believe we're down, are we 587 days?
Yep.
587 days as of today from March 13th of last year. I believe that that's about right.
I think it was 587 days to slow the spread, right?
14 days to slow the spread, flatten the curve, to 3 jabs to keep your jobs, okay? We're thinking about every SNL, not Saturday Night Live, of course, City and National Labs employees, every single Los Alamos National Lab employee, every single Albuquerque Fire Department firefighter, and every Albuquerque Police Department firefighter. You guys have been on the front lines. And I don't know that there's anybody more intelligent and emotionally intelligent at that than the people who work in our national labs. It's critical. And these people are absolutely not following their science. They're following their own science because they are scientists. For those people who have been listening to our program, you guys have been listening to Dr. Yeadon. Everybody know who Dr. Yeadon is? Raise your hand, okay? What do we know about Dr. Yeadon? Dr. Yeadon is somebody that Dowd introduced me to back in November. We played that and people wanted to hear it over and over and over again. Dr. Yeadon was, I believe, the head scientist, epidemiologist for Pfizer.
Yeah, respiratory pharmacology. Yep.
Think about that for a second. And he came out against getting the vaccine. When he started talking about the vaccine, he stated unequivocally that this was something that people should not take. Generally speaking, how long do vaccines take to go ahead and establish? Anybody know the answer to that? Years. Yeah, years, right? I'm not here to knock Donald Trump on any of this stuff, but Donald Trump only made one mistake during his entire presidency. And if you heard me talk about that, what did I say about him? Didn't trust his gut. That was the only thing he did wrong. He followed 2 doctors. They would be Dr. and Dr. Burks. We all know this, right? But we know that this vaccine was not a vaccine. It is what? Gene therapy. What do we know about a company called Moderna? mRNA. What do we know about gene therapy? It's modifying your RNA. The biggest IPO that has ever happened in the United States was Moderna. They didn't actually have a product when they went to market. Think about that for a second. You have been duped, okay? And now you're being told you better follow Moderna, you better follow Pfizer, you better, what is it that we know about the drug companies? Dowd knows, but I'm not going to let him answer to this. What do we know about what they've drummed up? Well, money, of course. Of course, that's the bottom line for all them. The crisis, yeah, that's pretty close. We know that they've drummed up a quote unquote vaccine, even though we know it's gene therapy, but we also know that you cannot sue any of those companies. They are not liable for what they put into your body. Can anybody tell me? Can anybody tell me factually what's in any of those vaccines? Not one person can tell me. You want to know why? Because they don't have to disclose it. So there's two drugs that happened that were very important. And I feel like you guys can do all of this. So I don't even have to talk. There's 2 drugs that were preventative to prevent all this from happening. Let's just go over this very quickly. One starts with an I and one starts with an H. The first one is, and the second one is, and what happened with both of those drugs? They work, but we know that they kept them away. So before I go ahead and introduce my next guest, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, okay? And we're going to talk about the medicine of all this, because my own personal doctor is here to talk with you. We have the governor. She can certainly talk about her medicine, her doctor. She's had 2 Department of Health secretaries, both have been relieved of their duties, and their epidemiologists. If it's good enough for her, I'm going to bring up my own doctor. We're going to introduce him in the next segment. Thank you, everybody, for being here for the Vaccine Mandate Town Hall, live from Albuquerque, New Mexico, 12 days away from the mayoral election. Thank you all for being here. All right, and welcome back, everybody, to the town hall here for 2021. This, of course, is all about you and vaccines and mandates. And we have a couple of additional guests in addition to the Dow 3000 here. We also have Dr. William Summers, who's my personal doctor and somebody who prescribes both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Let's give a hand to Dr. Summers. He's also a host of the show that is called Life Imagine, 12 p.m. on AM 1600 KIVA. Dr. Summers, welcome here into our live town hall. And a lot of people have a lot of questions, as always, but I'd like for you to kind of give us a 30,000-foot view on what's been happening over the last 19 months, 587 days, and what it looks like from your perspective in your 50+ years as a physician.
Yeah, I think the important thing is I first spotted this one coming in December of 2019. There were rumors that came out of China that somehow or another made it into Science magazine. And I went, that's interesting. And it began to blossom in January of 2020. And it became full bore in the spring of 2020. And it has followed the 1918 flu in many ways, in that there were two peaks. There was the peak in the spring of 2020, a second wave that came in the fall of 2020. And at this point, it's tapering off. I don't see too many cases active these days. And we have spin-off variants like the Delta variant, the Lambda variant, et cetera, et cetera. And with each new variant, it becomes tamer and tamer. But that point doesn't seem to be made for you folks. The one thing I've seen in the 150 some odd active cases that I've treated is hydroxychloroquine works beautifully. Ivermectin works as well, and they're not toxic. These are old, well-studied drugs. And I try to ponder, why should Dr. Fauci, who I met back in the 90s, why should he and the FDA oppose an active treatment of this disorder? And the answer is they're caught up in their own regulations. You see, they can't approve a vaccine for something for which there's an effective treatment. That's a conundrum for them. So you can understand the pickle that they've gotten themselves in, when in actual fact, the right thing to do is quit persecuting doctors like those who are the frontline doctors. I've heard of a case in Ohio where the Board of Medicine of Ohio insisted that a doctor have a psychiatric examination because he publicly stated his opposition to the vaccines. So this is getting to be a bit Stalinistic, where we will diagnose them with political schizophrenia and send them to Siberia. It is becoming very spooky.
Back in 2015, I want to say one thing, Dr. Summers, that he introduced us to is the Nobel Prize for Medicine was won by the inventor, or actually the researcher who was leading the research directly into ivermectin.
Ivermectin, yes, exactly. One of the things here locally I won't need to point out is that your Board of Pharmacy, and as I understand the rumor, per instruction of the governess, has sent an intimidating letter to all of the pharmacies saying that when I write a prescription for hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, I have to include a diagnosis with the prescription. Otherwise, they're not supposed to fill the prescription. Now, I'm sorry, but that violates the spirit of HIPAA. Everybody's heard of HIPAA, right? Your personal health information is your personal health information. It doesn't belong to the governess, does it? Well, apparently she feels it does. But here's the little dirty secret. If I put U49, which is the diagnostic code for the coronavirus, then the pharmacist is supposed to not fill it. What does it mean when your government says if you, I thought initially, well, they're just trying to get numbers on the number of people with coronavirus that are getting treated. No, if I put the diagnosis for coronavirus on the prescription, the pharmacist won't fill the prescription. Why does your government want you dead? What did you guys do? Anyway, just asking, just,
Dr. Summers, let's talk just for a moment, just how difficult it's been to operate in this environment when you were being told by big box stores like Costco and other places, Walgreens, CVS, to go ahead and tell you what you can and can't prescribe. When did our retail stores and the people who are supposed to be providing the very prescription that you advise, of which you are legally done as an MD, tell us about that environment and operating in that type of environment.
well, it's rather intimidating. And actually, I have the most trouble from CVS and from Walgreens. And it always comes from the younger pharmacists, the newer graduates who get taught that they aren't part of a team, they are the team. And that they're here to keep us doctors from killing patients. I don't know, that wasn't the way it was when I graduated medical school. The pharmacist was a valued member of the team. And you turn to him for his wisdom for the betterment of the patient. But now it appears that certain pharmacies are willing to do physical exams, different kinds of jabs. And I can hardly wait until they're willing to do neurosurgery while you wait. Or drive-by neurosurgery.
Dr. Summers, I appreciate you being here this evening. We've talked a lot about preventative measures. You guys are certainly responsible for your own health care. But you know, the face of medicine has certainly changed over the last year and a half, 587 days. We find ourselves, the city of Albuquerque, in a very different environment. You work with your colleagues all across the country. We've heard from Dr. Paul Alexander, who of course is on the Clay and Buck show. And we also know about something about the vaccines. I'm going to ask Dr. Summers to say a few words about the vaccinations. I, of course, am unvaccinated. I believe that Dr. Summers, are you vaccinated?
No, I have natural immunity, so I have better protection than any of these vaccines can offer.
Dr. Paul Alexander has addressed this very thing on the Clay and Buck show, and this is in Ho Chi Minh City and in Vietnam. They had 69 doctors who all got double vaxxed, all with each other, and all within a contained environment. What happened in that contained environment is they all got infected with COVID, and it had something to do with viral load. That viral load that was put into them gave them a viral load of 200 and I think it was what, 55 times? Yeah, 250 times the normal viral load that should happen. So these people were passing it around to each other despite the fact that they were vaccinated. What do you say about that, Dr. Summers? Is that a real thing from Dr.
Yes,
Paul
that's
Alexander?
real. A couple of things. The first thing is that blood banks now don't want your blood if you've been vaccinated. Why? Because you're your own form of infections. They want blood donations from people who've avoided vaccinations. The second thing.
Can I make any money off that? Or
That's a good point.
it's available at the right price.
The second thing is that if you go back to the original experiments, the double-blind experiments that led to the development of these vaccines, there is a consent form. In the consent form, it stated that if you get this vaccine, it could enhance or make the actual infection worse. It could actually make the infection worse if you get the vaccine, the gene therapy. And that's proving to be the case. The CDC did not make that public information until December of 2020. That was kept from us. And indeed, if you look at who's in the hospital with COVID, frequently it's with people who've been double vaccinated. So just saying, get your information, double check it, make your own decisions. You're an American.
And finally, when it comes to the science itself, we of course can always rely on our doctors. We can certainly rely on the people who do the data research. And then we have the smartest people who are amongst us, and they work for the San Diego National Labs. These are data miners, they're scientists. And you've heard us refer to him as Dr. X on our radio show. His actual name is John DeGregorio. He is a doctor, not of the medical type, of the PhD type. And he has been mining that data, which tells us concretely where exactly the information. I'd like to go ahead and introduce here on the left side of our panel, Mr. John DeGregorio. Now, John has been sending in a myriad of pieces of information throughout the last 587 days, right from the very beginning. Much like he did not trust it. And so we're constantly going to the data. One of the things that I started literally from day one, I knew that it wasn't about flattening the curve. You heard me talk about that as far as leadership. We went to orangenm.com and I put out that information. And then all of a sudden, like, satchels from heaven, we had Dr. X, John DeGregorio, who is literally substantiating by age group and where we were. And one of the first pieces of information that he sent us, which was so important, so critical, is he was looking at each of the age groups in terms of their death, because ultimately what we were trying to do was prevent deaths. That's why we didn't want people to go ahead and get COVID. And what we found, and John will tell us right now, what we found is that there was no reduction in deaths. Deaths were the same back in 2000 as they were in 2021. And John, tell us about how you arrived at some of those conclusions.
Thanks, Eddie. So the first thing is you have to get clean data. Anything COVID specific is way too subjective, way too politicized. The only data that's clean is total deaths, regardless of the cause, just all causes, death rates. And the CDC has copious amounts of data by state, by year, by age group, and by population of total deaths. So since there's no belief that COVID cures diseases, you look at total deaths by age group, accounting for population, of course, and you look for upticks, and that's the excess deaths. Now, the CDC does that, but their baseline is 2015 through 2019, the five most recent years. Those happen to be the lowest death rates in the history of the world. So yeah, 2020 looks horrific compared to 2015 to 2019, which again, for old people, 65 plus, are the lowest death rates ever. If you instead use a different 5-year period, the excess deaths go away. And all you have to do is go back to 2003 through 2007, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and the excess deaths in 2020 relative to the early 2000s are 0. So I was alive in 2008. I don't remember being terrified. I don't remember being panicked if my grandparents went outside. And I shouldn't have been, because they're just living a normal life. COVID is deadly. And for people 65 or older, it did bump up the death rates a bit. For instance, the 75 to 84 age group, the average rate for the 75 to 84 age group from 1999 through 2019, a 20-year period pre-COVID, was 5%. 5 out of every 100 Americans in the 75 to 84 age group was going to die prior to COVID. COVID bumped that up to 5.3%. And it made no damn difference what state you're in. Some states had very strict measures. By the way, according to a study out of the University of Oxford, New Mexico, throughout the course of the pandemic, and continues to be so, is the #1 most restricted state in the union. #1. We're #1. That's the only thing we're #1. Now, what that meant is nothing. For people who actually are affected by COVID, 65 plus, whether you were highly restricted or non-restricted, you got about the same uptick, that 5–10% uptick. If your death rate was 5% before COVID, it went up to 5.3% to 5.5%. And it had nothing to do with that. That's going to be the nature of the disease. Now, to put that in perspective, if you look at our surrounding states, New Mexico and our 5 surrounding states, if you look at the death rates prior to COVID, comparing, say, Arizona to Oklahoma, Oklahoma has a 30% higher death rate. This is pre-COVID. This is just the way it's been forever. Oklahoma has a 30% higher death rate for 75 to 84-year-old people than Arizona. The impact of COVID was 7%. Living in Oklahoma completely dwarfs the lethality of COVID-19. Now, if my grandparents decided to move from Arizona to Oklahoma in 2010, would I have panicked? And neither would have you. The fact is, the actual deaths, if it wasn't hyped, no one would have noticed. Because did you know what the death rate was in 2008? No, of course not. Did you know that we were living in a post-apocalyptic hellhole in 2008? I sure didn't. But the logic of today is 2008 and every year prior to that, it was hell on earth everywhere. So
we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions in the next segment. I'm going to ask a few more questions of scientist, researcher, and PhD, John DeGregorio, who's been looking at this information. And he no doubt, are you vaccinated, Mr. DeGregorio?
no, I'm not.
He is not. Okay. Very quickly, you looked at some of the pieces of information and another fight for medical freedom. You looked at lockdowns versus no lockdowns. Give us a quick 30 seconds. How did New Mexico fare against the other states? We decided to have a lockdown here. How did the other states that fare against us that didn't have the lockdowns?
So is it in our surrounding states? We have two of the least lockdown states, Utah, Oklahoma. New Mexico's number one. For people 65 plus, the uptick was 5 to 10%, meaning you go from a 5% death rate to a 5.5% death rate. It's not 5 to 15. It's the delta is 5%. So it's 5% to 5.5%. And it had no impact on the lockdowns. Oklahoma, Utah, and New Mexico were all the same. But younger people, working age people, 25 to 64, New Mexico had a 70% uptick. Now, that was the worst in the country.
Yep.
So for young people, working age people, New Mexico was the most deadly state in the union. Now, that wasn't entirely 2020. That's a trend that's been going on for the past 6 years. It's deaths of despair. Young people are killing themselves. What the lockdowns did is they made that much worse. COVID didn't kill these young people. The COVID response killed these people who are already on a trend of suicide and death.
Let's talk very quickly for a moment about Sweden. The perspective coming from Sweden, you guys have all heard about Sweden. That's not even being talked about anymore. Tell us how Sweden and then the COVID lockdowns of what they chose to do versus what we chose to do here in New Mexico. They were, of course, in Sweden going after herd immunity.
Sweden imposed very light mandates, governmental mandates. What the people actually did is their business. The government imposed very light mandates and they were vilified for it. What ended up happening, the 2020 data, is every age group had no increased deaths except for 90 plus. In the 90 plus age group, their death rate went in 2020 to what it was in 2008. The vast majority of those deaths, 50% of the COVID deaths in Sweden were nursing homes. They screwed that up and they admit it. Without those nursing home deaths, COVID-19 would have been a non-factor completely in Sweden.
And finally, let's talk about Sweden versus Norway. Two different approaches, your attempt at humor with some of the information that came out. What did you learn?
So, Norway had no impact anywhere. And Norway and Sweden had basically matched death rates except for the 90 plus. Sweden was worse for the 90 plus. Now, 90 plus means you've got a 25% chance of dying just walking around. You know why? Because you're 90 plus.
Let's take a quick break. We'll take your questions. We want to go ahead and honor this evening our San Diego National Labs employees, our Los Alamos Labs employees, our Albuquerque Fire Department firefighters, Albuquerque Police Department firefighters, and especially those small businesses who have been considered non-essential during the lockdowns for the last 587 days. We'll take your questions right after the breaks. Thanks everybody for listening. This is the vaccine mandate town hall right here live from Albuquerque. here on an undisclosed location.
Okay, are we on? Yeah, thanks. Okay, when we get to the question and answer segment, we're gonna call on a few people.
How many of you guys watch the KOB Channel 4 debate? How many of you guys watch the KOAT debate? All right. Is it okay for me to claim 5-0 on all those debates? That's a trick question, right? I am totally blind. Are you not in my ear? I can't hear you. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car. With it currently without battery. Yeah, there we go. That's all I need, right?
We'll keep going on this one.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good to go. If you want to speak to anything legal before we get,
Do I want to what?
if you want to speak to anything legal, you know, I don't know if everybody's worried about, you know, what kind of legal things are happening with the mandate, so.
Back here to the vaccine mandate town hall, live from an undisclosed location right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Thank you to all of you who chose to be here this evening. This is an important time for the city of Albuquerque for us to move forward. In order for us to move forward, we have to have this discussion. You guys have been shut out of the dialogue. You know that, whether it's the front page of the Albuquerque Journal, channels 4, 7, and 13, you have been forced into a situation of which you don't have any choice any longer. And so we have many of our audience members here this evening who are here from Sandia National Labs, Los Alamos National Labs. They're also with the Albuquerque Fire Department, as well as the Albuquerque Police Department. And it's important that we start focusing on real solutions to move our city of Albuquerque forward. We're not able to do that currently with the mandates that are coming in. And we're gonna go ahead and take some questions, comments, thoughts from our audience members here this evening. We have Dr. John DeGregorio mining the data directly from Sandia National Labs. We have my personal doctor, Dr. William Summers, and the Dow 3000, also known as Dowd Muska, who's here. We've had a very courageous person who has been working on behalf of the citizens of Albuquerque. And he is the one who has been taking the fight since day one. I believe he was one of our earliest callers, right, Dowd? And his name is Casey Peterson. And he's here this evening because he was the one who was first exposing what was happening at Sandia National Labs. Casey, I'd like for you to go ahead and say a few words and go ahead and ask your question, sir.
So about August last year is when I contacted Eddy about what was going on at the labs. They were racist trainings that were going on at the labs, and we kind of exposed that. And just a couple months after we were on the front edge of that, and Eddy was at the forefront of that fight, everything kind of blew up. And they've kind of put me in this limbo state since then, where I had suspended some of the clearances and different privileges and working off base. And then I thought that was my hill to die on. And before they can even take the opportunity to actually do what they're going to do to me, fire me, whatever they're going to do, up comes this fight with the mandates. And something that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to, either on the national stage or here in Albuquerque, is how damaging.
We're going to have Casey come up here so he can address all of you so you guys can see this tall gentleman. There he is.
So I don't think a lot of people nationally or in Albuquerque understand how damaging this is going to be at a national security level. You have some of the most brilliant people with the highest security clearances, not just in Albuquerque, but around the nation, throughout the community for national security. And we are turning a lot of these individuals, even ones that have got vaccinated against their will, into disgruntled employees. That is one of the issues. Probably the main, most obvious issue is the amount of people we're going to be losing at the labs and throughout the national security community. And the types of projects that we do aren't the types of projects that you just point at some kid from college and tell him, okay, this guy's been doing this for 30 years and we can't really talk about what he does in public and there are no papers on it, but go ahead and jump in here and take over for him. So you have projects that are going to be just fall apart without these individuals. You have these employees that feel disgruntled, the ones that are both being fired and the ones that are forced to get vaccinated and stay, and they know that they're no longer respected. And that turns these individuals into an insider threat. And whether they know it or not, now these individuals going out into the workforce are going to be targeted. There is a list, I guarantee a list for that China and any one of our adversaries has of every single individual that is about to be fired. And for them, it's about to be Christmas, because whether they knowingly get you or unknowingly get you, you are a target and you are a prime target. And they likely have an idea of what you did in the national security community. And this is something that is being failed to be addressed at a national level. And even here locally, we have very few people with the spine willing to stand up and fight. And that's why I'm so excited for people like Eddy Aragon that are getting into politics. It's like, finally, we have people that are waking up and someone with a spine that is out there and willing to fight. Because I'm sick and tired of politicians sitting down with each other across the table and determining if they're going to take half of our rights away or all of them. And it's complete BS.
Now, I just want to say one thing with regard to explicitly talking about something for Casey, is he's talking about critical race theory, okay? coming out of COVID, that was something that he exposed. He exposed the meetings up in Santa Fe. Then, of course, you exposed the meetings that were happening here. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Dow, that Casey was also featured on Glenn Beck as well. So these are important pieces in addition to the rights already being taken away when it comes to mandatory vaccine. So it's a two-pronged thing, not just the vaccinations, actually also the forced education or re-education camps. Am I saying that correctly, Casey?
Yes, that was on the
Critical
leadership
race,
level.
yeah, critical race theory.
Yeah, and this has been going on in our institutions for obviously a lot longer. We just barely saw it, and we're just waking up to all this here in the past couple of years. And so I think it's important that that we highlight here these mandates. I probably not popular at this venue, but I'm not anti-vaccine necessarily. I don't care if you've been vaccinated or not. It is 100% against the authoritarian mandates, and that is it. End of story. You have no permission. The government should have no permission to be telling us what we have to put in our body. You know, what is it? 3 jabs or lose your job. There's no right for the government to be doing that. And to this panel here, we have, is it John? Yeah. So you're from Sandia, and do you agree with the threat assessment I've come up with? Those are just a few of the avenues that we've looked at that put our national security at risk.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, compared to some of the things they tell us are dangerous, this trumps that. Pardon the pun.
We're okay with that word.
So anyways, thank you, Eddie. I appreciate you giving me time.
Absolutely. This is one of our heroes, just like many of you. Somebody who's willing to sacrifice, somebody who's willing to stand up. I cannot stand up without the Casey Petersons of the world and come out and represent you. So I just want to let you know that I think you are everyday heroes who are out there on the front lines. Casey, thank you for showing us the way. Let's go to Chad Barella and Aaron Moreno right here in front. Why don't you two gentlemen come on up front, and you guys can offer commentary as well as questions to the rest of our panelists.
Well, I think we're kind of here. I'm not a part of Sandy. He is, but we were business partners at a hair shop in West Downtown with our wives. And I own a business separately, but have gone through some of the racial issues. We got canceled last year, both personally and our business. So we kind of gone through a little bit of a fire. As far as the mandates and such, you kind of see this pattern happening. And so we took a stand and said, no, if you want to wear a mask, you wear a mask. If you want to be vaccinated, cool. You do you, the freedom approach. And so we've gotten a little bit of crap. I had a lung doctor who is a client of ours kind of come after us. She kind of tried to pull a little bluff on us. She said, oh, you're not forcing this. And I said, no, it's our conscience doesn't permit us to force others or to be the police, kind of the position in and out took. And she says, oh, okay, well, I was just with COVID patients. I'll be coming in tomorrow and I won't be wearing a mask. And I said, yeah. But she said, so I asked her, I said, do you have symptoms? And she said, well, I don't right now, but who's to say I won't get them tomorrow? And it was just this whole stupid thing. And I just said, you know what, we'll accommodate if you decide you don't want to do your thing. So she ended up canceling. We've gotten just stuff with that, but I'll let Aaron speak in his realm.
But in her world, she did say, if you end up getting sick, don't come to me, was a big threat that came from her mouth, which was, yeah, I mean.
All together, right, everybody?
Yeah.
We're in this all together, right? That's one of the big key words, key phrases that they've been saying, Aaron and Chad, is we're all in this together. And it's never felt more separate than it is right now. We've been outcast. You guys know that. They are feeling that as well.
Yeah, so Chad alluded to the fact that, our business got canceled to the point of getting threats, even to the point of his family receiving death threats. And so, it is hard as a business to want to feel like your community supporting you, right? And so being that I'm a Sandian, I would actually work from our shop at times, going to get out of the house. So I actually let my employer know what was happening. And it became a big issue because they said they're going to break in, they're going to destroy our stuff. And being the fact that I had a Sandia machine there, or even potentially my badge, that was a security threat, right? It was a threat to, everything that whatever sort of facade that looks like. But for someone like myself, who is being forced to get the vaccine and seeing now I'm the threat because I'm making my peers sick, and I'm limiting the mission that is Sandia, and it's just like blows me away what the priorities are. But I know of Casey, and I appreciate you, Casey, and I appreciate your courage. I met another person here tonight, Susie, who I also appreciate her courage, who showed her face and shared the story of us all getting this mandate. And I'm in the process of waiting for an exemption, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but it definitely is not comforting, especially when receiving an email and the top headline says, when your exemption is not approved, here's what you do, right? And it's like, oh, okay, so what are you alluding to? So I really do feel like, even as someone who knows of Casey's story, it was because of, hey, we pulled an email off of a server, or don't go look at that, and there's no comfort in that for someone who wants to do their best work. And I just want to end with this is my father actually spent 28 years at the labs, retired at the labs. His last day on the books actually was my first day on the books as a Sandian. And it's heartfelt. It's like, man, I want to carry on this legacy. But now we talk about it, and he's like, man, 28 years and feeling like this is what it's led to. It is so heartbreaking, it's so devastating that I want to put my life's best work there. But when that's happening, when I'm being mandated to do something against my will, it is just so difficult. And so, I want to continue to encourage those who are being bold, who are standing up for it, because Sandia is what Albuquerque has always been known for, and the major employer here. So, it'll be a big impact, and they'll lose a lot of talent if this continues to go and there's no exemptions that are granted. So.
One of the baseline things about Sandia is we know that it's all about fairness and equality and all these other things. Yet what we see here in 2021 is they are literally leveraging mandates to go ahead and drive employees out. And as both Aaron and Chad have just communicated to us, these are people who have willingly dedicated their entire lives. His father, 28 years, he starts the first day, he comes in, and what's he to do about all this stuff other than, hey, if you don't get the vaccine, you're going to be out. That tells us that neither one of these guys, if they were working for Sandia or working with Sandia, wouldn't have any value, and that will not stand. We have to push back. We have to let them know that we are valued, that we love our job, that we love Albuquerque, and that this is a legacy that we love so much. We invented the atomic bomb. We're smart enough to go and figure out whether or not we want to inject something into our bodies, and that we want to know something is. So let's give Aaron and Chad a great big round of applause. Thank you. All right, so I met this young lady, Annette Aranda. She reached out to me feverishly on one Saturday morning and said, you've got to jump on board with what we're doing. And they said, we're going to have a gathering at the gate. We're going to have a gathering over at Wyoming or over at Eubank. And you might think that these things don't matter very much for those of you who are watching out here on the World Wide Web, okay? But these tests mean everything. They are important. They're illustrating your courage, and they're showing that you have a voice. So I'd like to invite Annette Aranda, who has been coming and talking about this stuff. She's been leveraging Telegram. Annette, why don't you come on up here and talk a little bit about what you're doing and maybe ask some questions of the panel.
Well, actually, I've been at the labs almost 22 years now, and I'm actually shocked. I'm shocked that on a regular basis, we are being told about diversity, inclusion, fairness, no bullying, no discrimination, no retaliation, and that is all we have experienced over this entire time. I was actually caught before Sandia's legal department put it in writing that our managers were allowed to ask us our vaccine status. My manager actually asked me. He asked me what my status was. I told him I'm not vaccinated. I don't want to be vaccinated. And he said, well, this is going to affect your performance because this shows that you don't care about your employees, your coworkers. And I was sickened. And I did have my PMF today, and it actually did affect me.
And that would be your performance
my
review.
performance review
Okay.
was today. It did affect me. Every comment on there was excellent work, good job, good feedback, all my customer feedback, over, above and beyond. And yet, because of behavior, he said, you are rated low. And that behavior is that I do not agree with these mandates. That's the type of stuff that we've been going through. So I am going, it's been fear of retaliation the entire time. But I am standing here because God has not given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. And this is not just about these vaccines, because I too was vaccinated as a kid, and I vaccinated my kids. This is about freedom. And I've raised my kids to know what the truth is, and that we should stand for freedom. And God forbid that I do not end my life declaring that God has given us freedom. We have the freedom to choose. We have the freedom to be informed what's in these shots and to reject them if we want to. I am sickened. I'm actually sickened that Sandia, who talks all day long about safety, constantly, safety this, safety that. Any one of us walking around can pull the plug on anything that we see at Sandia that looks unsafe, and that work will be stopped. We've been taught this for 22 years, and now we are to be silent about the people who are having adverse effects. Help me understand. I mean, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but Jesus, I've got some common sense. You know what I'm saying? And so, honestly, I am just sickened by it. I am 5 months, on December 8th, I'm supposed to be fired if they do not accept my exemption, which after today, they might not. But you know what? I'm standing, and God's gonna provide. I'm just here to say I'm sickened. People are getting hurt. People have adverse reaction. We have actually had deaths, and nothing is said. Nothing at all is said. And mark my word, after December 8th, they will no longer put out emails about COVID cases in this building and that building and this building. They will not have that anymore. They will not have the daily check-in app for those folks that stay at the labs. Right now, those people who are not vaccinated have to fill out a daily health check app, okay? And those who are not vaccinated have to wear their mask indoors and outdoors. And yet, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated both get COVID and spread COVID. Help me understand. This is the best and the brightest. And I say this sincerely. I love Sandia Labs. I've worked there for 22 years. I am brokenhearted that our leadership did not put out a mass email to all 1,400 of us, or however many there is, and say, let's fight for Albuquerque together.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you. Good job. I want to say one thing that's important. We're going to take a quick break. And, I hear Annette's emotion. I hear Aaron. I hear Chad. We hear everybody that's been fighting back. And I think you have to realize that a simple entry of me into this race has changed two things. One at the Bernalillo County and one at the city of Albuquerque. What don't they have in either of those places? Go ahead. No mandatory vaccine. Yet we have it at Sandia National Labs. We have it at the Department of Energy. We have it in our federal employees. This is something that we can push back on. If you guys are willing to go ahead and continue to fight with me, and that's important. Locally, we're going to hire our own local epidemiologists. We're going to have our own information, and we're going to let the science lead us. Annette has just pointed out sort of the contradictions that's in the middle of the hypocrisy, if you will, that has been happening. Do we know whether or not our actual federal employees and our leaders have been vaxxed? Do they need to be vaxxed? I doubt they have. I doubt our state leadership has been vaxxed themselves. So we're going to make sure that we continue to call that out. We've got more questions, more comments, more information right here from an undisclosed location in downtown Albuquerque. This is the vaccine mandate gathering here for the 2021 election. Back in a couple of minutes. And welcome back here to the Vaccine Mandate Summit here from an undisclosed location here in downtown Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've heard from some of the people who are on the front lines, Sandia National Labs, Los Alamos National Labs employees. Now it's time for us to hear from our healthcare workers. We've got a panel here. We have a data and PhD, Mr. John DiGregorio. We have my own personal doctor. It's good enough for Michelle Lujan Grisham. It's good enough for me. My doctor, who's been in medicine for over 50 years, Dr. William Summers, and D. Dowd Muska. We appreciate all of you who are joining us live by YouTube, wherever else you might find us. Now let's talk about our frontline workers. Our frontline workers are our healthcare workers. These are the people who have been fighting COVID since day one. And now they're being threatened with their jobs on a vaccine mandate. Whether or not they get to keep their jobs is whether or not they decide to go ahead and take a vaccine of which they don't know anything about. We have three healthcare workers, Dennis Smith, Lauren Morgan, and Miriam Morgan as well. They're all going to be coming up here to tell us a little bit about what's happening in the healthcare industry. Let's give them a great big round of applause. These are the people who take care of us, folks. And I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to really take our advice from the very people who would be advising us on health. Welcome here to the summit. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Miriam, and I have the pleasure of being Lauren's mom. And Dennis is my husband. He works for Sandia National Labs. And for the last year and a half, 2 years, we've been essential workers. We've, while much of the country stayed home and wore their sweatpants and all that, we just kept going to work. And we didn't, we appreciated that. We appreciated the ability to keep going to work, and we value our work. We love to work on the teams that we work for. I work at a hospital here as a respiratory therapist, running the ventilators that President Trump tried to get more of. And I've had some really interesting experiences as we've gone through this COVID situation. At the beginning, we didn't have enough PPE, and on a daily basis, what we needed to stay safe changed, literally on a daily basis. One day they would tell us, you'll be safe in a COVID room if you wear this getup. 2-3 days later, we're not doing that anymore as supplies ran low. So wear this getup and you'll be safe. Don't worry, you'll be safe. Well, the truth is I was safe. We tried to lead a healthy lifestyle, and we washed our hands and we covered our faces when we needed to. But the truth is I was exposed to COVID a number of times. Accidents happen in the hospital, and I had, I don't know, maybe a dozen known exposures to COVID, and I didn't get sick. Or maybe I'd already been sick, who knows? But then they asked me to take something that I knew I didn't know enough about to cover me for something that I knew I had been exposed to that didn't cause me any threat. And then they told me that if I didn't want to take it, they would kick me to the curb. So for 1.5 years, I was an essential worker. I got a 10% discount at UPS for being a frontline worker, but now I can be kicked to the curb. So I was at work today working with COVID patients. In order to work, I spit in a tube once a week and send my DNA off to somebody I don't know who now has control of my information in order to let me in the door. None of my coworkers who have had the shot, who can give COVID to people, as we know, CDC tells us that, they don't have to do that. I'm being discriminated against. That's the situation, but I love my job. I have the honor of taking care of the people of New Mexico, and I don't want to quit doing that. I want to keep doing it, and it's worth spitting in a tube in order to be able to do that.
Morgan,
So-
I want to ask you a very quick question, and thank you for your service. At any point were you presented with preventative measures, hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin or any other preventive measures besides the normal PPE of masking or anything else?
That's a hard thing for me to talk about because every day I have patients that die of COVID. COVID's a serious thing. You don't want to get it, that's for sure. And I have patients dying of it. I run that vent. I'm the one that turns it off and takes the tube out of their throat and wipes the adhesive off their face so that their families can look at their face without all that on there, and hold the tablet up when we're not allowing families to come in and say goodbye to their loved ones. And that's a really hard thing to do, especially knowing that there are therapies that are not in the list of drugs that my patients are getting.
I'm so sorry for the emotion that you're going through.
It's
Tell
good.
us what would prevent some of this stuff from happening. Would it be ivermectin? Would it be hydroxychloroquine?
I don't know. I'm not a
Okay.
doctor.
Okay.
I'm a respiratory therapist, but I like what this doctor said. And I'll tell you what, it's darn hard to find information on the internet. So I appreciate so much you bringing informative, what we need to know to stay safe and to keep ourselves well. We need to have this information because it's hard to dig out of the internet. It's
We
really
appreciate
hard.
you being on the front lines and your daughter following in your
Lauren's a
footsteps.
nurse.
Go ahead,
Hi,
Lauren.
my name's Lauren Morgan Smith. I am a nurse here in Albuquerque. I work in the ER currently. I'm on leave, unpaid leave right now because I didn't get the jab. And we're desperately understaffed. I don't know if you guys.
Let me stop you. You
Yeah.
just said it. There's
Yeah.
the word. How
Desperately.
many nurses are we short? What's more important? We know that we are 6,400 nurses short here in the state of New Mexico. You just heard her say it. We're desperately understaffed. And what did the government choose to do?
I don't work. I can't work. I could work today if they lifted the mandate. I could work today. I could go to my ER and help the people of New Mexico, which is what I love to do. I've been a nurse for 12 years. The thing that is the hardest for me as a healthcare worker is hearing the persistent lies that are tugging at the heartstrings of people in New Mexico and telling them they have to do something for my job to be easier. What we do for a reason. We do because we want to give it to the people. If we have a calling, I mean, you don't do healthcare for the money, that's for sure, right? But what I'm hearing from the news and what I'm hearing from our political leadership is that our hospitals are full of COVID patients, and they're not. I have to tell you, they are not. This week,
hospital had 20 COVID patients today.
20. There are 20 out of 611 at our local county hospital up the hill. That is not overrun with COVID patients. There are a lot of patients, and there aren't enough healthcare providers to take care of them. There aren't, because we're putting a bunch of them on leave. We fire a bunch of them, and quite frankly, the tension that we feel every day from hearing something that's not true about what we do, it makes you crazy. It makes you feel crazy. And you know that people are telling you, well, we have to get the vaccine in order to make it better for you. And it's like, no, you don't. No, you need to do what's right for you. As a nurse, we fight for our patients' autonomy. Okay. I have patients who have terminal illness who we know there's not much we can offer them, but we offer it and they choose whether or not to take it. They choose to have a dignified death, or they choose to fight it all the way, or whatever else. We back up their decisions 100%, because those decisions are made from the people in those shoes. What did they say about walking a mile in somebody's shoes before you judge them, right? As nurses, we look at our patients as those sorts of individuals who know what's best for them. We help inform those choices, but then we support those decisions, whether or not we agree with them. I fight for my patients every single day. That advocacy extends to them. But here, I'm hearing from my healthcare leadership, from my legislative leadership, that I don't get the same privilege. I don't get to choose what's right for me. And I want to ask them, have you walked a mile in my shoes? Because you haven't. And I know what's right for me and for my family, and you do not. And so I want you all to know, I want Albuquerque, I want New Mexico, I want everyone to know that while we have a lot of patients, they are not COVID patients. We have very, very few COVID patients. And we have really standardized processes for taking care of these patients at this point, except we don't give them medications that can help them, unfortunately.
Dennis, I want to say, your family's very proud serving our community. You're, of course, at Sandia National Labs. Must be coming from a different perspective, where you're forced to mandate as of, I believe, December the 8th. If you don't, you're left out of a job. Give us kind of bridge both pieces, both the science, where you work, as well as the healthcare, which you see, and talk with both your daughter and your wife about.
Well, everything that Annette said about being told, they use safety as the trump card, right? Oh, gonna do it because it's safe. We do everything because it's safe. Your safety means the most to us. And then they turn around and say, you got to wear a mask on your face all day. And you have to take a jab of this stuff that we don't even know what it is. And it is literally killed, by some accounts, hundreds of thousands of people in this country. So the hypocrisy, the just in your face harassment while pledging that we don't harass. The ethics training I took today, how unethical could you possibly be, right? I mean, it's just galling on a daily basis. But, and I have one quick story about hydrochloroquine and azithromycin. I was poking around on the Sandia COVID-19 website, and I found this great little paper from March of 2020. And it shows that hydrochloroquine and azithromycin together eradicate this bug in 5 days.
Wow.
5 days.
Wow.
Without the azithromycin, it takes about twice as long. Without either one, it takes twice as long as it with just the hydrochloroquine, roughly, right? I mean, they could end this thing in a week if they wanted to. That tells you everything you need to know. They don't want to, right? They're taking down our first responders. They're taking down our military. They're taking down our national security. They're taking down our healthcare workers all at the same time. Who's happy about that? China.
Wow.
Right? I'm not the best engineer on the planet, but I can see a big picture where other people sometimes can't. If you can look at this situation and not see treason written large, I don't know what you're looking at. I do have one question. I have one question for Dr. Summers. This is one of the things that just galls me no end. I watch allegedly intelligent people wandering around the campus all the time with face coverings on. They're driving in their cars alone. They can't even look at you. They can't talk to you. They walk past you. You know, they can't, it's amazing to watch. These otherwise intelligent people are absolutely, completely controlled by this little piece of cloth. Dr. Summers, what do you think about masks? And as you know, is this a good thing or a bad thing?
The definitive paper was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, November of 2020. And it was a large Danish study that compared 3,000 people using masks, 3,000 people not. The result was the people with the mask did worse. And every time you've looked at mask data, not the phony stuff that came out of Arizona that the Attorney General, or excuse me, the Surgeon General was talking about today, that's a bad study. But when you look at legitimate studies of masks going back to 1918, they don't work. First off, the cloth masks that people wear have pore sizes 300 to 400 microns in size. This virus is 1,000 times smaller. So what you're doing is putting up a chain link fence to keep the mosquitoes out. It does not work.
I like to say that it's a screen door on a submarine. So
there you go.
That's a good way to put it.
Perfect
Thank
analogy.
you, everybody. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you, Dennis. We've got one more. Do we have a little bit of time before we cut to a commercial break and wrap it up?
Commercial break.
Okay, so let's keep rolling here, and we want to welcome everybody who was courageous enough to be here at an undisclosed location here in downtown Albuquerque. And before we get to our last guest, who's on the front lines and is with the fire department, I really want to talk about what my candidacy means to you and what this means for the city of Albuquerque. When you have an unvaxxed candidate, I've been thrown out of restaurants. I said something very snarky a week after Donald Trump was, I don't know, not elected, cheated out. I don't know how we want to phrase that. All up to you. But I walked into Cafe 6855. And when I walked in without a mask. And I was upset. I was angry. I was with my two kids, 6 and 8 year olds. We were there, actually 5 and an 8-year-old at that time. And we walked in, I said, I'm not gonna wear my mask. Isn't the election over? I went directly to the place where I was gonna sit down and eat and have breakfast. Did they leave me alone? They were angry that I was sitting down and I was a paying customer on a table of 12 and they were gonna make a scene. They were gonna make an example of me. And it was the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office who walked in, served me with the paper, put on their white gloves, didn't care how it looked to my two kids and said, we're gonna pick you up and we're gonna take you out. And the moment I saw them put on their white gloves, I said, okay, I'm leaving because we're not gonna go ahead and do this in front of my kids. We're not gonna do this. This isn't what we're here to do, okay? We settled out without any problem. I settle everything. I haven't been in a fight since I was in 6th grade. Nobody wants to mess with me. They know I'm a scrapper. They know I'm a fighter. I walked out. What did I do to those Bernalillo County police officers? I made them go back to tell my kids that they're not the bad guys. My kids were crying. My kids were emotional. They just saw me get thrown out. For what? I was already in the, didn't have my mask. I was sitting down at the table. I'm a paying patron. What were they trying to do? What example were they trying to make it? What were they trying to get at ultimately? They were trying to control you. That's what this is about. Every single example that you have found, it's all about whether you're masking in here or people are doing virtue signaling. I care, I'm not selfish, right? Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. You need to understand that it's all about controlling you. They're not going to control us any longer. That's why me as a candidate, as your mayor, has already pushed back against the mandates that have come back from the Bernalillo County's office, from the city of Albuquerque office. When it comes to other things that are happening, pushing back on the stadium, where do you think that happened? Right here. Nobody hates Peter Travestiani and the New Mexico United more than I do. I want them to succeed, but I also want the Duke City Gladiators to have their own arena since we're handing out so much money. Let's be reasonable. Let's be focused coming out of this COVID-19 and do the right things. I don't know how we got caught up on everything from Black Lives Matter. By the way, I got hit on that too, since I'm 4.6% Black. You guys heard about that, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. To focusing on making sure that we have our masks to see what's essential and non-essential. The politics in this state simply has to stop. We live in the best state, in the best city, with the best culture, best food, and the best people. And we are being driven and bullied down by the political agendas that want you to genuflect and virtue signaling to say that if you're not with them, you're against us and we're going to punish you. It's time we stop punishing business owners. It's time we stop punishing people. It's time that we stop punishing our Sandia National Labs, our Los Alamos National Labs, our police department, our fire department. There's plenty of blame to go around for everything. But let me tell you something. We have nobody to blame but ourselves if we decide not to fight back. And if we don't fight for the 505, and if we don't come out and win this election, it's on us. This is an easy election. I've embarrassed my competition, both the mayor and the sheriff. You know that. I've done my part. We've got it out. We've hardly raised any money. We've got billboards. We got commercials. We got everything that we need. Now we just need more people. And I'll tell you, the Whisper campaign has already started. People are on my side. People are behind us, and I'm on your side. I'm on the people's side because we know that our sheriff and our mayor and our governor, our attorney general, and every single politician out there is not on your side. Understand your power. Understand what you guys represent. Every single time Casey or Chad or Aaron or Joseph lines up and says that I'm going to push back and I'm not going to take it anymore, they're scared of you because they know that there's nothing they can do to shut you down. So have the courage, tell every single person, if you've received a text message from me to directly say, hey, I'm going to go to Fight for 505. It's not Eddy Aragon for mayor. It's Fight for 505. It's time to go ahead and stand up for what we believe in and say that we're not going to take this any longer. That's every single one of you who's a fighter. And I'm glad that you guys all heard about Let's Go Brandon. And I was going to say that at the end of the debate, but I had already won the debate. I'm like, I'm going to take all my votes and I'm going to sneak off a stage and I'm not going to put that out there. So that's the only reason I didn't say Let's Go Brandon. So let's go ahead and put our hands together for Joe Lopez, who is an Albuquerque Fire Department firefighter.
Thank you. I don't know, can you hear me? This is weird, but I want to thank Eddy for putting this on. I'd like to thank the panel for being here. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my wife for passing the invite to the town hall to me, because if she wouldn't have forwarded it to me, I wouldn't have known this was going on. So thank you, hon. I am a lieutenant with the Albuquerque Fire Department. I start my 21st year tomorrow.
Wow.
And I am also married to an employee of a laboratory that skirts our city. And so I have a unique opportunity to see what Casey and Antoinette have been going through. Antoinette, your words, I see it in my wife every day. She deals with the judging and the bullying, and it really affects me. And I'm in a unique position because I'm eligible to retire. So I had a feeling that the mandate was going to be coming down to the city. And sure enough, Monday night, a counselor called Isaac Benton pushed a proposal through to have not everybody, but just the police and firemen mandated to get vaccinated. And this is one of the only things where I am pro-choice, okay? Because you're dealing with your body, not your baby, but we'll say that for another time. But we should be able to make our decision, whether you work in McDonald's or you're a policeman or you're a fireman. You should be able to make that choice. And there are many police officers and there are many firefighters who feel the same way. We're not anti-vax, we're not pro-vax, we're pro-choice. And to allude on Casey's point about the experience that's going to be lost. 21 years, D-Dowd could probably do the math. What's 21 years times 56 hours a week? That's what we work as firefighters. That will be walking out the door. And it's not just there's paramedics that it takes a year to train. You become a firefighter after 6 months, paramedics, it takes a year. Arson investigators, which I am one. You go through the fire department academy, then you have to go through a 6-month police academy. Then you have to have 2 months of investigation training. HTR, hazardous materials, all this stuff that wildland, our beautiful bosque, that's not an easy way to fight fires. All that experience, and there's some that I know will leave if they are forced to. That's all quantifiable, but you can't quantify the experience of 21 years, of 28 years, of 22 years with the net. You can't quantify that. And that's what really hurts me when I get to my 21st year to see the city is actually going to consider pushing this mandate on us. So that's my unique perspective. My wife works there. I work here. It's affected us. And I do have a question for you though, Eddie. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, by the way, it's 42,000 hours, just so you know.
Nice. All right. Thank you. Nice. You did that up right there, huh? I'm sure there's many police officers and firefighters here in the city, and you might not know the answer, but they should know that you are anti-mandate, and I've told many of them.
Yeah.
When you become mayor of the city.
City manager. I'm no
City
more
manager.
important than this good-looking guy over here.
So when you become city manager, and if for some reason this mandate for the public safety employees does pass, will you have any veto power over the city council's actions? Or if you know and you don't have to answer, is there any way for the employees who want to try and hang on for a career that they love? It's a career that we love. If they hang on and go work without pay or whatever they got to do to try and get to next year when you take office, is there any way to reverse this proposal and this mandate?
So there's no way to reverse the proposal, but we do know one thing, that who can actually enforce anything? The city manager, the mayor, okay? So enforcement comes from the mayor's office. Whether it's a red flag gun law, I'm not going to go ahead and find any, tattletales to go and I want to tattle on their friends, neighbors, ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends, ex-husbands, or whatever to enforce red flag gun laws or masking. We don't have to enforce it. It's really that simple. They can mandate whatever they want. They can hold me accountable. The governor can certainly try to go ahead and say, okay, here's the mandate that's coming down. Who's the one person that can stand between my people, the 6,900 employees who work for the city of Albuquerque, and her mandate right here? City manager, the mayor. The buck stops here with me. And I will tell you, there won't be a single firefighter, Albuquerque Police Department, a city employee who will be fired for not wearing a mask or not having a vaccination. Nobody should feel threatened with their jobs. This man's got a job to do. He's got to go ahead and run into burning buildings, save lives, and investigate arsonists. We cannot be without him. Just like, understand that. Once you guys realize that and we realize that, I don't care what the rules are. That's not what we're going to be focused on. We're going to be focused on growing the city. We need more firefighters. We need more Albuquerque Police Department employees, right? How many police officers do we have? Does anybody know the answer to that? The answer is nobody knows the answer to that. Whether it's 896 or 750, we know we need at least 1,500 police officers that are out there on the streets doing their job. Can you imagine not having to do your job because you decided not to get the jab? Oh, it really puts into question whether or not our police officers are actually essential or healthcare workers are actually essential. So I think we need to approach it from a very reasonable standpoint. So my answer directly to you, Joe, is you will not be fired. I will not enforce any of those things. Even if the city council passes it, I will be there with my kids and anybody else who wants to join me at the city council to fight for the 505. And when's the last time the mayor attended any city council meeting? When's the last time that you've seen any of your public officials out and about? I don't know if I've talked to you at all, Joe, about it, but I have a city manager vehicle. Once I get elected, I'm going to be visiting every school, every business, every opportunity just to get out and talk to people, to visit you, to see how you're doing. Hey, how's it going? How are you doing? How's your business? What can we do to help? Give us like a 30,000 foot view and tell us what's going on. How can we do better for the city? That's going to be the focus day one once I get into office. I am humbled by the opportunity to serve you. We have great guys like him. We have great people in healthcare. We have our wonderful business owners and proprietors of their businesses. Whether we're down 40% or 52%, we know that we're down. Dowd's quantified those numbers. You know how down we're down in terms of the top 20 cities, 17 out of 20. In terms of the healthcare, I can't tell you that we're doing any better based upon those shutdowns, and we're not going to shut down. There is not going to be any mandates or anything like that. So that's the best that I can go ahead and tell you. And I can tell you, this is the type of stuff that keeps me up at night. I was there for all the shut-ins. I was there for the people. As you might laugh at me because I hang out a lot at my radio studio. I live there. I enjoy it, but let me tell you, I have a lot of friends on the other side of that microphone every single day. Every single day, people are reaching out to me. Had a very important friend of mine who died. Her name was Judith. She would travel from Pecos every day to Bernalillo, right, Dr. Summers? Just to listen to me. I was her only friend in the world. She came and she brought us a gift for Christmas. Dr. Summers just paid for her cremation services. The radio is a life link for the rest of the community. I want to do that for the rest of the city as well. Tell people, spread the good news about what we're doing here at Fight for 505. Thank you, Joseph, for your service. Thank you to your wife thanks to Joseph's wife who spread the good word. Keeping that whisper campaign, whether they continue to want to focus on whatever the mayor and the sheriff are doing, we don't care. Just keep spreading the word about fighting for the 505. Thank you. Thanks, Joseph. All right, let's get some final words. Any final questions for anybody? We're about 10 past 8. Yes, sir. Go ahead. You can, I'll just hand this directly to you. There we go.
Okay. So my name is Brandon. I'm both in the Air Force.
Let's go, Brandon.
Yeah. That's right. I got a lot of that. I put that on my Facebook actually. So I'm in the Air Force and I'm also at Sandia Labs. I get a double dose of this corruption. Okay. The question I have is that so rational people like yourself and others can get elected, what's being done here for voter integrity?
Yeah, great question. The answer is nothing. The answer is zero. You guys love Mike Lindell? He's annoying. Mike Lindell might be the most annoying guy I've ever seen on TV, right? Well, what's being done for voter integrity? Mike Lindell. Eddy Aragon. What happened to Eddy Aragon's translator at the top of the crest because I wouldn't shut up about the voter integrity stuff? They went in, they chopped my translator down. You guys remember when that happened? November the 29th on a Sunday morning at 4:29 a.m. Who gets up at that ungodly hour? Let me tell you what's being done about voter integrity. You voting, show up. Let me tell you what happens in off election years, 2021 being an off election year. Republicans win, conservatives win, people who love the red, white, and blue win. Understand that, okay? Understand that we have an opportunity. We know that we've had 86 years of Democrat Party domination, okay? We keep doing this. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting the same results. What's happening right now? What's happening across this country? Let's go. Brandon's approval ratings are 38%. Maybe they're lower. I still don't believe they're even that high. It's that bad. Do you think 80 million people actually voted for Let's Go Brandon? No, I don't think so. But we know all these things to be true, okay? Here's what I don't want to do. I don't want you guys to get lulled into a false sense of security that, hey, I don't have to show up. Nothing's going to change. Oh, they're cheating anyway. That's what they want. They want your apathy. They're like, oh my gosh, they gave up. Finally, we got them. We have the darkness overshadowing the light. Show up. Election day, show up now, tell every single person that you can. What's being done about voter integrity? I'll tell you, it'll be done day one when I walk into office. When I walk into, and you know that I've been treated pretty unfairly. Do I complain about that? Do you ever see me complain? Oh, just a little bit? Do I complain about KKOB or anything like that? A little bit. You got to keep fighting. Brandon, I think your question's well placed. We can't do anything about it until we have power. How are you going to get power? Saturate the market, right? What do they say? Vote early, vote often. That's their game. Okay. Show up as many times as you can. Just vote. Just vote, folks. Okay. $52 million has been spent on these Dominion machines. We know that the algorithm worked in their favor. Okay. That algorithm, if we know anything about that, what do we know about that algorithm? Red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. What do we know about this election? Nonpartisan. There is no red, blue. We know that I'm at the top of the ballot. That's what we know. Okay. Day one, and if you want to confuse my name with Eddy Aragon and vote for him as well, that's pretty ridiculous. I think we benefit in a number of different ways. The polls are suppression. They're going to show up on Sunday. I'll bet you we're somewhere between 22 and 25. Our own internal polling on 87,000 calls, Nancy, with 2,700 responses was 42%, and it keeps increasing. Right? We made the calls. In fact, I'll take the very latest numbers on all this and let me read them to you. So if you guys want to take them down for those of you guys playing at home. 87,193 calls, 2,791 responses, 1,146, 41.5% people said, I am voting for Eddy Aragon for mayor of Albuquerque. We did the work. We didn't go out and poll. We had 8 to 10 industrious, hardworking, hard-calling people, plus the Republican Party of the state of New Mexico, who amplified us by allowing us to use something called Campaign Sidekick that got those numbers out. And we just smiled and dialed and told our story. And they're saying, hey, you don't know who Eddy Aragon is? They don't know. It's our job to evangelize and tell people about it. What do we know about the 2013 election? 2013 election had 19%. Anybody know a guy by the name of Pete Dinelli? You ever heard that name, right? He got 28%. How did a Republican like Richard Berry get 68% versus Pete Dinelli's 28%? Okay. So we don't need a miracle here. We know the stats, we know the math, we've done the calls, we did the work, we showed up. I'm my own campaign manager. It's not hard to run a campaign, folks. You just do what you say you're going to do, show up, beat their asses in the debate every single time, and you let them know that, hey, we've got values, we've got the agenda, we've got the people's trust, and you guys have all, you get to own all this bad news, 4 years for Mayor Keller or the last 7, 8 years for Sheriff Manny Gonzalez. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Mark, and I'm a retired park medic. And
okay, Mark.
Is we know that we've lost 255 businesses since the first quarter here in our area, and
seems low.
Well,
I think we've lost a lot more than that.
Probably that's the number I had.
Yeah,
I was talking to Nancy, but I'll blame it on her. But who are the honchos that are making these decisions to absolve some people from the vaccine and to screw the others, and the health police? And is there some way we can push back with the reporting the numbers of terminations that are associated with that?
You know, Mark, I can't answer your question because I don't know the numbers. I'd be lying if I said I could. Whoever is responsible will hold them accountable. One of the things that I can say is, you know, when it comes to these, you know, terminations that are happening, whether it's Sandia National Labs or Los Alamos National Labs, I'll be there on the front lines. Does anybody know what an average person makes from Sandia National Labs? And does anybody know the median income for the city of Albuquerque? Yeah. What is it? Yeah, about 120. Do you know how many, every single time we lose a Sandia National Lab employee, how many incomes is that on the average case basis? What's the median income here in Albuquerque? Please give me a number. 41, 44. That's 3 incomes. For every Sandia National Lab employee that we lose, that's 3 incomes. Same with Intel, same with all these tech jobs. People need to understand that. Okay, when did those jobs being lost because they won't get mandated for a vax or masking? When did that become the priority to get rid of those people? It's very interesting. Let me tell you something, and Dowd knows a lot about this. Something happened. We were expecting New Mexico to fail, not being able to come out, and then all of a sudden we're like, we got $18.3 billion from the federal government as long as we made sure we controlled, and then economic growth doesn't matter. We have to change the equation. Small business is the lifeblood of the city of Albuquerque and the state of New Mexico. But if we have 36% of our employees who are working for state, federal, local governments who did not miss a paycheck, okay? Let's not forget about that. They didn't miss a paycheck, and that's fine. That's fine. I don't have anything against them. But who did miss a paycheck? Those small businesses. They missed a lot of paychecks. I had to give five months of free advertising for my advertisers because I'm like, I don't know when this is going to end. I thought it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It was 3 months to go ahead and make sure we're going to reopen in June, July, August. For the first time in 320 years, Dowd, I think we did not celebrate Easter. There you go. One of the things, that's great. One of the great things that we know is that the state was founded by a lot of drunk people who like to make babies and worship Jesus Christ. We're party central, okay? But somehow we let that crazy little tyrant up in Santa Fe get all juiced up on Wagyu beef and what kind of alcohol? I don't know what she was having. And then let her dog poop all over the governor's mansion, right? And she got to do exactly what she wanted. We're not going to let that stand anymore. So, to your question, Mark, I don't know, but we'll find out. We will absolutely find out. Go ahead. Run up. I almost want to play The Price is Right with Bob Barker. Oh, I've been waiting for you. Come on up. She's one of my favorites. Coming up. And this young lady, so incredibly courageous. She is standing up for New Mexico, standing up for Albuquerque. She showed up at so many of our events, and I happened to see her on the Sandia National Labs where you're speaking up as well. So I just want to thank you for all that you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And you are the only candidate here who fight for freedom for all of us. The other ones fight for their group. Yeah, I mean, my Sandia colleagues have said a lot about what Sandia is doing with their employees. It's completely disgusting. And, I've been working there for 11 years. I didn't submit any exemption. I'm just ready to be terminated because this whole maximum is completely ridiculous. So I thought that the exemption itself is we don't need exemption to decide what we put in our body. Okay. It's just like, so I love my job, Sandia, and I'm kind of research, doing research and development type work. But I know that, they're going to lose lots of more people who are actually very set, more like nuclear weapon related work. My work less are, nuclear weapon type, but they're going to lose lots of very talented people there. So one thing I want to, I want to ask you, Eddy, if you become a mayor, you will be the mayor. One thing I am here, say I'm a parent, I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. I care about my kids' education. What is going on in APS school now is completely ridiculous. So the Santa Fe politician in Santa Fe, when the normal people are busy fighting for vaccine mandate, trying to live our life, the politicians in Santa Fe have passed the critical race theory. You're gonna put the critical race theory, incorporate that in all our K-12 school education, they statewide, and right now they want to put that in every school within New Mexico. So this is going completely crazy. Those people don't care about our kids' education. They care about all the race, discrimination, the divide kids. Basically, they put all this poisonous concept to divide our kids, to teach our kids to hate each other. Those politicians, they should be really put. Here's the thing from you: if this come to, they're putting this critical race theory into our school, Albuquerque here and all other states within New Mexico. What can you do if, as a teacher, how can we fight back on this critical race theory? Because the school board right now, APS, they don't even hold any school board meeting anymore. They don't want parents to be there. They don't want parents to tell, voice our voice. We don't want critical race theory. They don't hold their school board meetings. They don't open that. So the question is, what can you help us, parents, to fight back on this completely poisonous critical race theory to our kids?
This is amazing. I just got to say a couple of things. I'm going to say a couple of things. Hopefully people can hear me. All right. Hopefully you guys can all hear me. I think this is important. How about her passion? How about her fight? How about what she's talking about? She's already doing something. She's using the bully pulpit of this microphone. I will use the bully pulpit of the mayor's office to fight back against critical race theory, to talk about it every single day. You won't just be able to couch me at the end of the AM radio dial and say, well, he's that crazy guy at the end of the AM radio dial. We'll be elected mayor and we'll be fighting back. Now, here's what we can do. We can establish a liaison between the city of Albuquerque, $1.2 billion of our budget. They have a $1.4 billion for the Albuquerque Public Schools. What we can do is make sure that we have input. People understand that when we are talking about the city of Albuquerque, we're also talking about our Albuquerque Public Schools, 17th largest public school district. What is it that I'm already doing by being at the very top of the ballot? You go to vote for 505 or vote505.com. And what do you see? You see all of these school district people that we're voting for. We have Ali Eniga. We have Art Carrasco. We have, what's the third one? She got endorsed by Susanna Martinez. Courtney Jackson. We have those three. Because we're at the top of the ballots, it's very, very important that people realize that, hey, I'm going to vote that ticket. We're helping them already. So that's a very critical thing that we're doing. One of the things that we know about the Albuquerque Public Schools is people are now more violent. We're now to 82,000 students. Do you guys know that we've lost that many? Is it 5,000? 5,000 there, 5,000 at the University of New Mexico. The Albuquerque public school system is not safe for people who are going back to school. What's happening in the Albuquerque public school system? Washington School, just down the street. Black Lives Matter to Tim Keller until a black kid gets shot over at Washington Middle School. What's been done to alleviate any of that? Zero. Not one thing. That's less than a half a mile from his house on Park Street, just right down the way. What can we do? Establish the Albuquerque public school with our police officers and making sure we have bike cops on every single public school system so that people are building a relationship. I don't know if you guys remember, but every public school used to have a cop. Do you guys remember when that was the case? That doesn't happen anymore. We don't have that either. Now, as far as changing the culture, whoa, we do know that the planning and development department is in the city of Albuquerque, right? Yeah. The transgender bathrooms are a little strange, don't you think?
You know what?
$100,000 a piece. We ain't going to be doing that stuff. For how many? Anybody know the number of transgender students at the Albuquerque public school systems? No. 17 total. There's 17 of them.
Total.
Yeah, total that are there. I mean, we're spending time. These are things that just won't be approved. We're not heating on anything, but I can tell you there's been transgender people for a very long time. I'm not trying to win on this issue, just so you guys know, and especially out there. We're not politicking and looking for a popularity contest, but we aren't going to be sort of changing our bathroom codes and our planning and development to go and accommodate 17 people. That doesn't make much sense either. One of the great things that I can do, so I am of indigenous heritage, right? I'm 26%. Should we just talk about what, I don't know what percentages you are, but I know what percentages I am. I'm 26% Native American, I'm 66% Hispanic and 4.6% Black, right? So what can I do? Pretty much, right? Except you can't because you're white. You are not allowed to do anything unless we let you do it.
Well, I am a woman.
Oh, well, you got a little give. If you're a single white male, well, you're just really bad. Let's just talk about something we can do. What happened in downtown Albuquerque? Don Juan de Oñate statue got taken down, right? Can you imagine trying to explain that to a kid who comes from and is a 12th generation New Mexican? How am I supposed to say that? And Tim Keller answered the question on Channel 4 the other night. He's like, I'm going to refer it back to the city council. I'm like, what? What are you talking? They destroyed public property. Here's what we're going to do is we're going to educate people on the history of Don Juan de Oñate And we're going to talk about that history that we had and that we were asked back after we were, someone said, kicked to the curb in 1680. We came back in 1693, still drunk, still loving Jesus Christ, and still making babies. That's our culture. I am that culture. You have to understand the first vines. When I talk about wine, everybody knows I love wine. What do we know about wine? First vines were planted in the United States where? About 3 miles down the street in 1629. So if you're enjoying wine, you're enjoying New Mexico, okay? Please understand how incredibly rich and amazing the city of Albuquerque and the state. You know, we're one of the 20 oldest cities. Did you know Santa Fe is the second oldest city, 1609? The first is St. Augustine. There's a whole history here. And we're not celebrating it because nobody is out there teaching people about it. People are like, wow, why do I love New Mexico? Why do I love Albuquerque so much? Well, I don't know. There's just things here and people are strange. And I don't know, I could do well and there's mountains. Like people got here and they're like, well, we haven't left for this long, but we're still 50th. That doesn't make sense to me. You want to talk about the number one thing that makes me angry is losing. Do you want to see me angry on the November 3rd? Then don't vote for me. And I'll tell you, nobody wants to see me angry. Not a person wants to see me angry. Okay, we want to win. I want New Mexico to win. I want the city of Albuquerque to win. She's here because she wants to win. You're all here because you want to win. That's exactly what we're going to do on November 2nd. I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. Have some refreshments, cookies. Thank you to you, public, for putting this together. Thanks, everybody, for coming downtown in this undisclosed location. Tell everybody about our campaign to fight for the 505. Thank you, guys.